Go! We are a go. All systems engage. All things 3D moving forward. Hey, all you beautiful listeners out there. This is today's episode, Friday, special episode on August 22nd, 2014, week in review. And I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
And we are here to talk about everything that happened, or some of the things that happened in 3D this week. We can't talk about all things because there's just too much going on. It's just such a fast-moving market. It's just crazy. So, so we'll jump right in with some news items from this week. You want to kick us off, Mike?
No, you're supposed to kick us off, but I'll go ahead and do it. I'll start. No,
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's see. All right. Actually, which one do I have up there? Why don't you go ahead and do yours, because it looks like I may change one of my items.
Stuff up?
Yeah, I got it up and running. I'll go ahead.
Okay.
So my original thoughts was to do something about the Robo Planter, but I decided this one was a little better because it's kind of cool, in my opinion. Both of us have Delta printers. And I know that you were trying to create one of the big S, and if you remember, we had John, Ollie, and Steve from See Me CNC, and they were showing off their world's largest, which I think is now the second largest because the Japanese built one bigger, but who really knows? But here's another guy who's created one. It's about 5 foot tall. And it's a little unique because it doesn't use plastic, but it actually uses ceramic. So he is literally, and you can see the whole setup here. Here's the Delta platform itself.
Looks
pretty
like
standard.
A pump box of some sort.
But notice down here, all of his electronics. It looks like it's in a 4U type rack-mounted device. The power supply is down here on the end. And obviously it controls this, plus it has probably a stepper motor actuator that pushes the ceramic into a tube into the nozzle, which I guess would be the hot end on our machines, but in his it's just the nozzle. And if you go down further, here it is again. There it's in operation, and it looks pretty smooth. Standard Delta quality. Look at this intricate shape here. But isn't this kind of cool? And one of the reasons I brought this up, and I kind of talked about it the other day with you, and actually I haven't looked at my email. I'm hoping to get a message today. I really want to go forward with creating that chalk-mounted Robo Painter. You know that I was talking about? So I'd really like you to jump on board with me. I think it would be really cool.
You got it.
And essentially,
right when I'm finished, my plotter bot is maybe a few days away from being
well, you'll have all the
done.
experience, and then I may buy a partial kit and then just expand upon it so that it will improve it. We've only got 15 days, but I think you and I can do it, and I think it would be super cool. But since it's a robot and not a human being, they may tell us sorry. But I hope they don't, and it would be very cool to actually have something up there where we actually use chalk to draw with, and I think it would be kind of neat. But getting back to this, look at these sculptures. I mean, again, it's ceramic. Look at the quality. What people are doing with these open source, like we talked about before, the Delta is pretty much an open source project. The guy who developed it pretty much put everything out there. There's no proprietary technology in it, and people are just doing thing after thing after thing. I believe the next thing we're going to see is 3D printed skin. Somebody's going to be a human, being printed on one of these. It's going to be in some sci-fi movie. They're going to use a Delta because it's open source. So the first cloned human is going to be using an open source Delta product. Oh well, that's my fantasy. So on to you.
Okay. So my first one for the week here is pretty cool. We're always talking about medical applications of 3D printing because I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there, and just for improving the lives of people. So my first one is FDA awards the first approval for customized 3D printed facial device by OPM. So they actually got FDA cleared a 3D printed polymeric implant for facial indications. So they actually have proved the FDA. A lot of these 3D print implants have been done obviously overseas, where they don't have quite as laborious of a process to get cleared for experimental reasons. But in the United States, everything's kind of backwards. So the FDA finally approved one of these orthopedic implants.
Well, I wouldn't call it backwards. I mean, I'm not much of a conspiratorial type person when it comes to this stuff. We have in some cases one of the best, but at the same time one of the most, what would you call it? Government
Inhibitive.
Sluggishness in getting something.
Right.
But I think sometimes it's better to be slow than fast, because we've already seen a lot of consequences of drugs that were rushed out there. So,
yeah, well, but my major beef with the FDA obviously is the revolving door that happens between the pharmaceutical industrial complex and the FDA. So essentially what you have is you have the top dogs at the FDA working as the top dogs at these pharmaceutical companies, and so you find that that the barrier to entry for pharmaceuticals, or even like an implant like these, could take years for the layman to make happen, but for these big companies, they can make it happen really quick, just because they have they know the secret handshake or whatever. And a lot of times it doesn't benefit the people at all. I mean, you look at how many dangerous things are out there that the FDA has cleared, as far as drugs or these kinds of things, and we know there are a lot of drugs out there that are completely dangerous and should not be on the market even to this day. I mean, you look at aspartame or any of these things, and they're poisons, but they are still allowed on the market. And I'm not saying that I'm not arguing whether they should or shouldn't be allowed on the market. All I'm saying is that the clearance process just takes so long, and it costs so much money that the everyday average Joe simply can't get things onto the market and improve the life of other people, whereas in other countries they can. So
and as we talked with, the other thing that needs to be FDA approved is the software itself that's used in order to create the 3D fabrication. And in our previous interviews and roundtable, this was identified by Stephen, who pretty much said, even though he has an open source product, it can only be used for research because it hasn't been FDA approved. In a lot of cases, there are more applications and uniqueness to his software that could really benefit the overall market. And then if you look at Brazil, which we also interviewed, they opened theirs up and it's already being used by doctors. So it's, I agree with you, but obviously it's a very complex system and I don't know everything about it. So
right.
But it's cool that we finally are moving forward with it, and the United States is really looking at it, considering some of us think we're the foundation of the 3D print market to begin with. So I'm glad it's moving on. So my next item is kind of a fun item, and let's see. And there's a reason I'm bringing this up, because my project for next week is going to be involved with this. Oh, hi Jesse, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Okay.
Hey, good
Jesse,
morning.
we're still finishing up with the news items, so give us about 5-10 minutes, and then we'll be with you. And for our audience out there, this is Jesse from Autodesk, and hopefully he's got something great to share with us today. So again, thank you, Jesse, for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So back to in Tokyo, there's the FabCafe that has set up the ability to create your own Goomy Bears, but I guess they wouldn't be considered Goomy Bears. I guess they would be called Goomy Me's. And essentially you go into a place and they do a scan of you, and then they take that scan, clean it up, and then create a positive of it, and then they make a mold, and in the mold they pour in a gelatin concoction, Goomy Bear, and then they make your own Goomy person. So I was thinking about this. I'm going to do this. So I ordered on Amazon some material that you can actually depress one of your models, and I'll show those a little bit later in my little section. But this weekend I should have some Goomy Shabans.
It's like the voodoo doll of.
Yeah,
it's like new 3D voodoo.
I'm going to literally
bite your head off.
So I will have some Goomy Shabans for the show next week. Actually, probably a Goomy Meestark as well. So
and for our listeners, Siobhan is Mike's beautiful wife and companion, and we love her, and it's just this will be great to see Siobhan as a Goomy person, a gummy person.
Yep. So it's funny, and actually they show them in different positions, but that's been going around in the news, and I thought, well, how hard could this be? So we'll find out this weekend.
Oh, this is great.
With the resin printer, I printed out, as you know, and we'll show them here in a moment, some, as I call her, the Gypsy Dancer. She put on her gypsy outfit, and I printed her using my Form 1. So now that I have a positive, I should be able to make a mold, and next thing you know, I'll be able to do that. Maybe I'll get some chocolate and make a chocolate version of her. So,
and there's actually a really good mold making tutorial that just got put on YouTube last week by the guys from Tested. So a little shout out to those guys. From Tested.
Make sure you send me a link.
They have a premium service on Tested, but this one is a freebie, and it's actually just kind of a promotional. But it's about a 45-minute video, and they show one of my favorite methods of creating a silicone master mold from a 3D printed model. So I think there's going to be a lot of you're going to see a lot more of that going on. There's a lot of room to expand. Pretty much there's one supplier right now in California, Smooth On, and I've been using them for a couple years now, and they are big in Hollywood and obviously for two-part casting resins and things like that.
Their main office, at least for shipping, is on the East Coast, so it's kind of weird. So I was going to buy some the other day thinking that, okay, they're in Hollywood and it should be one a day, two a day, but I went to Amazon and got the same, actually a different material, which actually is more like a doughy subject, and you push your object into it, so it creates a nice detailed impression, and then you let it harden, and then you've got your silicone mold. So, our silicone mold. Okay, so move on to your next item. We don't want to keep waiting too
Next
long.
item is just an update about the HP news. So this is another 3Ders.org article. HP's Whitman, CEO, is planning to enter the 3D printing market this fall. This is from this morning. And probably there's not really that much of an update over what we've already touched on. However, there's this video interview from CNBC at the bottom here where she's on Kramer's kind of investment show, and at the very tail end she kind of gives a little hint at where they may be getting some of their technology. She claims that they quote unquote or quote it shares technology with their clear toner market unquote. And she also Kramer actually asks why they don't buy Stratasys, so why they don't make an offer to buy Stratasys, and she actually, and then he follows up that question at the end of the interview. So for those of you that want to watch it, head over to 3Ders.org, and we'll have our a link in our podcast manager. But at the very tail end of the interview, she says, or Kramer asks, is this the Israeli technology? Kind of hinting at maybe Objet, and because that's where Objet is based out of, who is now owned or a subsidiary or a part of Stratasys, and she says yes. So I don't know if that means that they're looking into PolyJet. Obviously, they are a huge inkjet company. It's a $110 billion company. So they've got some major clout, and I'm real excited to see what they're going to come out with this fall.
Well, if you remember, what was it, 2 months ago, actually no, a month ago, we did our latest Roundtable podcast about HP and where are they. They were supposed to have that come out in the spring, and obviously it was delayed, so it's interesting. Because one of the things that we
Yeah.
showed was that, yes, it was going to be delayed to the end of the year, so it may look like it might be a little earlier. And if you go to the podcast, one of the images I show is what a lot of people speculate what it's going to look like, which is a UE print type printer. And so it'll be interesting if there is some truth to what you're saying of their marriage with Stratasys and going into the PolyJet style printer functionality. Okay, so on to my next item. Let's see. If you remember our friends from Ultimaker, they've done something which I think you also have an item about Ultimaker. They've donated $10,000 worth of 3D printers to the eNable. I don't know if it's a foundation or just a program, but if you're not familiar with eNable, essentially gets a lot of 3D printers and designers together to create prosthetics for those that are in need, and a lot of time they're children. And one of the reasons that I brought this story up is that I want to segue into something that Chris has been working on, which I think is really cool and touching, and I hope that he can share some of the design work that he's been using here in a moment. But I've kept up with them. We're eventually going to do an interview with them in the next couple of weeks, but eNable, I think, is a great program, and we've talked with Eric several times, and I think he's a really great guy, and he's a very open source type of guy, and so it's nice to see that they're doing this. And if you remember in our last week's 3D in Review, we showed the 5 original Ultimakers being used to create an elephant for another foundation. So really good group. I can't say anything more about it. I've got an Ultimaker 2. It's in my case, a little bit pricier than some of the other printers coming out, but it's well made. I got one of the first ones, so I've had a few issues with it, but I've gotten some really great prints. MadeSolid has said that this, in their opinion, competes well with a Fortis style printer, so that should say a lot. Ultimaker has always gotten good reviews. So if you're looking for a 3D printer, and you want to feel good about the company behind it, I would recommend them.
That's what a lot of these companies. I think. So that'll segue right into what I'll share about my. For those of you that are interested, you can check out some of these prosthetic projects by going to enablingthefuture.org. This is a hand I've actually been building for one of my people, one of my clients, and his son is actually missing his left hand, and so I just had the pleasure of working with him and printing one of these out. And also, for those of you interested in this whole project, make sure to head over to YouTube and check out Elliot Kotek, who was the keynote speaker at SciGraph this year in Vancouver, which is going on. I think it's just wrapping up. And his keynote was a beautiful keynote, very emotional, very touching. But he talks about not only the Robo Hand and some of these the prosthetics projects, but all kinds of other projects that are involving 3D for humanitarian aid, and how a lot of people nowadays, they don't really we don't care about a company that's non-profit so much as we care about how responsible they are humanitarian-wise. So Tom's Shoes is a perfect example. People love Tom's Shoes because they know that they give, for every pair of shoes that you buy, they give one away. And they don't care if it's a for-profit company or not. They don't care. The Red Cross is a non-profit, but a lot of people look at Tom's as a better alternative to the Red Cross because they think, hey, maybe our money is going to be more well spent because a non-profit can be can post they can post no profit, but they can still pay their people exorbitant amounts of money. Not saying that this is what the Red Cross does, but there are
there are nonprofit organizations that have gotten in trouble. So, but again, a profitable company has to be in business, but it's also nice when they're sharing. And
So that we're seeing a lot of that now, especially in the open source community, where companies that make a profit are still, like Ultimaker, are stepping up their humanitarian game and really doing things to better the world, which is a big reason why a lot of us people in the 3D community even got into it in the first place. When I was thinking about opening up a service bureau, the reason I got into it was to help other people realize their potential, realize their dream, realize their ideas, so manifesting their thought into reality. And now we have that ability, but then we're taking it even further now with these and I mean, giving a kid a hand that doesn't have a hand. How good does that feel? I mean, it's just unbelievable.
And it's, as we talked, Chris, the other thing, even though a lot of kids probably like the appeal of having a robotic type hand, we talked about actually scanning, if they have both limbs, their other limb, and then mirroring it so that we can provide a skin process, either a plastic layer on top of it to give it more the illusion of of their hand, and would be based upon their other limb. So we're talking about moving forward with that as well. As you know, I spend a lot of time in 3D scanning, so I think that's what I'd like to do to help this project out as you move forward with it. And the other thing is, the fact is that we put up this podcast that, I put a lot of time in, and we like to make sure that a lot of people are aware of that, 3D printing is not just for profit, but it really is helping a lot of people. As we did in our previous roundtable on 3D in medicine and our upcoming seminar, it really has a lot of a potential, and it's really showing a lot of use right now. So I'd like to move on, Chris, and bring in Jesse.
Yeah. Hi, Jesse.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm sorry for keeping you waiting, but I really appreciate you coming on. For our audience out there, make sure you tune in on Tuesday at 12:30 Pacific Standard Time. We're doing a roundtable podcast, 3D in education, and we've invited in Jesse, as well as Eric from Ultimaker, but he won't be able to make it, but there's going to be another person that I've worked with at Ultimaker, Sander, who I've talked with several times, who's a good support person and obviously is also involved in their educational program in Europe, and it'd be interesting to see how they're moving forward in their education. We're looking at getting a local person from our university here to be on, and then also John Ollie will be on from CNC, who's really big in the mid-coast, the plains. Is that? I don't know what you would call it.
I think mid-coast is good. You should keep it mid-coast.
Yeah, the mid-coast.
Yeah.
No, we're
the
on
Great
the
Plains.
The Great Plain. But John will be on as well to kind of talk about what they're doing. And obviously open source plays a big role, and even though Autodesk makes a lot of money, I'm assuming they do, with their other big products, they've done a lot to create a lot of free and excellent products. In fact, I use a few of them myself, 3D Mesh Mixer being one of them, 123D being another. You have some great educational, Fusion 360. All of these
That's
products
what I'm getting everybody on board with right now.
Yeah, it's a great program. It's a good collaborative program. And when I asked Jesse to be on for next week, he kind of hinted at me that they're going to have some new things or some updates. So I thought maybe he can give us a scoop on our show and kind of tell us a little ahead of time, a sneak preview of what's going on. So Jesse, you've got the floor.
Great. The things I wish I could tell you, I will tell you. Just keep an ear out for us around Maker Faire New York, or World Maker Faire timeline. We have some really big announcements coming out on the educational front, where we're going to be announcing some new programs and new things on that line that will really, kind of same as along the lines of Spark, take us into a whole new area that we haven't ventured into before. As far as software goes, and especially on the 123D stuff, I think a lot of our focus right now is making the core product stronger, but as well as moving into the Spark platform. which again, is this idea that we can make an open source platform and an open source-ish printer that people can hack, build upon, do things with to really push that side of the market much further.
Yeah, we brought up about 3 months ago, I think, or maybe even a couple months, that Autodesk was creating their own SLA printer. Is that still moving forward? We haven't heard anything else new. If it looks like anything like your 3D renderings, that thing's going to be a sweet-looking product. So, have you seen it?
Yeah, I have seen it. I've helped assemble a couple of them, and we're actually hand assembling the first batch in Pier 9 in San Francisco, which is kind of fun because it's all the Instructables crew and us, and and people are putting them together. But it's what's unique about it is that it's not a printer that we're just putting out there for sale. It's a printer that you can take apart. It's similar to the original MakerBots where people were buying them to hack them. We're just really on that front of it. This is something that you can buy to experiment with material sciences. This is something you can buy to experiment with print heads and other things like that, so that you're not just locked into another consumer printer. I mean, there's so many great consumer printers on the market.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to stay a little bit away from that game.
No, well, so is this going to be a kit, or is it will be fully assembled? And do you have a price yet, or is that all still up in the air at this particular point?
We don't have a price identified yet, but it's going to be kind of on the higher end of the consumer spectrum because we are targeting towards business purchases as opposed to consumer purchases.
Okay. Are there any specs on it, like build size? I'm assuming it's still an SLA type printer, correct? And laser based, right? Or okay.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I won't pry too much, but yeah, please send us a link as soon as you get something up, and we'll talk about it. And now you mentioned that you're planning to announce a lot of this at the next Maker Faire. Do you remember the date?
Yes, there's a couple things coming up. One thing that everyone should check out right now is Mesh Mixer. We just started an educational channel for Mesh Mixer called Mesh Mixer 101, where we're going through all the new features and all the new tools, and people can use that. I think it's a really big help for a lot of people that are going from Tinkercad or 123D and trying to figure out how to really print and print well. So I highly recommend going to that. And then the other stuff that's coming out is at Maker Faire New York. We'll be doing a big release of a new program there, and that is September 20th and 22nd.
Oh, a new program, huh?
Yeah, and that'll be a whole new side for us, something that we've never really got into before. And then also at 3D Print Show in Paris, which is not until October, but there we're going to be doing a really major update so that everyone can really see and experience the full spectrum of Spark.
Okay. Well, again, Jesse, we really appreciate you coming on and and kind of sharing with us. And it looks like there's a lot of stuff coming. We talk about Mesh Mixer and 123D. I use it on a regular basis because I think it's a great sketch tool for somebody who has some CAD experience. I can really push some stuff out, and you've really refined the tools over the year that I've been using it. I'm pretty sure that SVG works now. That was one of the features. So you put another update out there, and it seems very stable. In fact, I only crashed it last night and forgot to save, but that's fine. But it doesn't crash as often, so that's a good thing. Mesh Mixer doesn't crash as often. That's a good thing. So they become much more stable over the last year. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go out to Autodesk 123D, and that'll bring up the whole series of applications that you have, and they're all fun to play with, and they're all free at this time, right?
Yep, and they'll remain free. We would never charge for something that we released as free. There is a premium account that you can subscribe to, but that's for people that are really so hardcore in it that they really want to download all these models and have the extra memory online.
Yeah, and that's even very reasonable at that.
Yeah. And Fusion 360 is a whole other side, which is at this point free because it's basically a beta test, and they're adding features. That's Fusion 360 I find is really nice because I use SolidWorks day to day, but there's no free tool out there other than Fusion that will really work that's like cross-compatible. So I have some projects I'm working on open source with some people and they use the Fusion side, and so I can share files and we can kind of go back and forth because it's a great free solid modeling. And then I guess in a few years you guys are planning on maybe having a subscription service for it or something like that.
Like $100 a year or something like that.
Yeah, it's very affordable.
Private, and then if you're a commercial, it's like even a little bit more than that. So yeah, your pricing structure, you're really going in the right direction. Your educational program is in the right direction. I don't know if you started moving into subscription on your bigger platforms yet, but
we have a little bit, and the latest one that just came out for people that are into creature making and things like that is Sketchbook just got re-released as a subscription-based product.
Oh.
I don't have the price offhand, but it's fairly reasonable. It's like $8.99 a month or something like that. That's extremely affordable.
It sure
and
is.
It's a lot of updates there too, where it can translate a lot easier into the 3D market. So.
Cool. I'll have to look into that one too. Well, again, Jesse, thank you. You're welcome to stay aboard, but we're going to go ahead and finish up our program, and we'll get back to Chris talking about his project of the week, and then I'll talk a little bit about mine, and then we'll see what's coming up for next week, and then we'll be done. So go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. So project of the week, obviously, we kind of already touched on it. I've been working on this Talon Hand with one of my favorite people, and him and I have been building his son, who is missing his left hand, one of these Talon hands, and I can't begin to tell you how much this means not only to his son but him and even myself. I mean, it's just amazing to watch technology and something as simple as 3D printing, or something that's easy for me to so significantly change somebody's life, by giving them the ability to use another hand, which, I mean, you take that so for granted when you have one, but when you don't, I can't imagine what it would be like. So it's just great to be able to
I've broken
to
my
somebody.
wrist, and as I've told you, I've got what they call trigger finger in several of my fingers on both hands, but sometimes it gets so bad that it I lose or I'm impaired, and I have to get regular injections. So, obviously I still have my hand, but I know what it's like when you don't have full function of it, and so it's nice to be able to do that. I noticed though that the model was right-handed. So do they make a left-handed, or do you just invert
all the files? If you go to this site, they've actually got the left, the right, the parts together, the parts apart. You can download the full assembly, and if you imagine, I mean, it's not hard with nowadays with technology. Even if they only provided the right, you could very easily reflect it and make the left side because they're identical.
Yep.
Yeah, no, they've got the left and the right both on there, and even different sizes. I scaled it up a little bit because I think we want to err on big because
you'll grow into it.
Exactly, and they grow so fast that and the bigger one, they can still use it. So I kind of thought, hey, let's scale it up to make it at least usable and error on the big side. So we're going to be playing around with it. He's going to be building, kind of putting the rest of it together today and probably through the weekend. He's from Cambria, and so I was probably going to head over there maybe at one point this weekend and kind of maybe go document the assembly process.
Very, very cool. So my project, I've actually got two of them going on, and let's see if I can bring up the screenshot. Yeah, this should work. This is a further continuation of my 4 Eyes project. The lensing system is pretty much finished, but what I've had to do is change or modify the way that the RGB extension lens is set up. I had it originally extending from the bracket itself, but it was blocking the camera. The field of view on the iPad, and especially the iPhone, is more of a short lens, so your field of view is fairly wide. So I put it on the base, and now it actually works better. I'm probably going to create a little bit different locking mechanism here. Whoops, there we go. Locking mechanism here, but that's pretty much the way it is. I did run into a problem. The original structure sensor bracket that this thing fits on and then slips over the iPad is more flush than my quick bracket. So I've made this slide so that you can move it up and down, and then you can glue it together if you want to. I may make a slotted tab so it locks in. I don't have a lot of material to work with, so again, once I'm close to it, I will ask my friend Chris to create a prototype for us. And so those of you who are interested in the structure sensor and 4 eyes, you can thank Chris. He's going to be our go-to rapid prototyper and product developer in the future, because he's got a great machine to do it.
All right, well, thanks.
And actually, I'll jump to myself now and show some of the models. You know, it's one thing to scan things, but they're just stuck on your screen, or you can send images. So I have been working on the Gypsy Dancer, which, as Chris has alluded to, is my wife Siobhan in her garb. So here we go. This was done on a Form 1 in their clear material, but then I coated it in order to protect it, UV protect. And I said, well, I want to make it glow in the dark. So I got some glow in the dark paint and painted it. So now at night it glows like a little ghost. So it's kind of cute. So there you go. And then I also used MadeSolid's new black material. This was a prototype or beta version, so they added a little bit more black to it, but I kind of like it's a little bit translucent. It holds detail fairly well, and this also works on the little RP, which I will try as well, but that's another version. I will probably use this version here. If you remember, we were talking about creating Goomy Siobhan, so there we go. I'm going to use this to create the depression in this weekend, create up a Goomy Bear Alexa. In fact, I'll bring it up. Here's a recipe for anybody else who wants to try this. Where are we at? There you go. This is the Wellness Mama, and essentially you use elderberry syrup, hot gelatin powder, and coconut oil for greasing the pan, but it's a very dark material, kind of like the object that I just showed you. So that'll be kind of cool and a little healthier. Obviously, there's still some sugar based in the elderberry syrup, but you know, can't get away from doing a Goomy Bear without having some sugar. So it'll be kind of fun. We'll see how that turns out, and I may be chomping. That's not a good way. I'm nibbling on my wife in the next episode next week, maybe on Tuesday. So we'll see. So the other thing I wanted to show is that, okay, so you've scanned yourself. So what can you do with it? Both Chris and I have created, you know, printed models of ourselves that just sit on a shelf, but I wanted to do something that had some functions. So using some programs like 3D Code, I created a little pencil holder that looks like me. Sprayed it again with some glow-in-dark paint to create a little bit of a kind of a mist to it, but if I need to find a pencil in the dark, I'll be able to do it. But there we go. Hi.
That's a good-looking cup holder.
Thanks. I was actually going to try and create 2 of these and put them on my shoulder, the devil and the angel, but ran out of time. So there you go. There's some practice, and both mesh mixer and the product that we talked about in the Fast 3D Code make it very easy to take your scans and do things with them. I'm planning probably to make a coffee cup with the likeness of Siobhan on the front of it. That would be kind of fun. So every time in the morning, I'll look at her beautiful face. So that will be fun. So where are we at now?
We are ready to wrap it up.
Well, actually, I got one more thing, and it actually, I started an interview this week, and let's see, give me a moment to find the image. Interview with Dan. There we go. So I'll bring this up. So I sat in the chair. I had some problems, so I did some video. I have a robotic, what would you call it, cameraman that allows it to position it, and he's wearing a mic. So he actually talked about the whole process, and this is the iTero intraoral scanner, which is a laser scanner that you put in your mouth, and it has a camera, and then it actually scans your teeth and creates a 3D model. And then you can take these 3D models and clean them up and then send them to a miller and do them out of porcelain. But we're going to do something different next week. We're going to clean it up and then I'm going to print it either on the Form 1 or the little RP, and that with a casting resin, and then they're going to send it back to them. They're going to fire it and make a gold alloy filling, and then by end of next week or the week after, we're going to put it in. Right now I've got a temporary, and temporaries aren't as good as the other thing. Originally it was like a silver alloy or even worse, and it kept cracking, so hopefully this will solve it. But yeah, there's the big hole. It was worse. What happened is when they crack, you get further decay because there's no protection, and he had to even pull it out more. So ouch, huh? So
Yeah.
So look for the interview next week of me being in the chair and him discussing the process, and then he'll be in the office with me. Chris, you're welcome to come by. I don't know exactly what date, or we'll just have you come in on Google Hangout, and we're going to discuss actually the design process and what needs to be done. So it'll be really kind of fun. So, okay, Chris, why don't you go ahead and end it for us?
All right. Well, thanks again to all our listeners for this exciting episode of All Things 3D. Today was August 22nd, Friday of 2014, and hope you learned as much as I did.
About our Roundtable podcast next Tuesday at 12:30.
Next Tuesday.
Tuesday. Again, we have Jesse coming in, John Ale from jeez, tongue twister. And then also Sanders from Ultimaker, and we're going to talk about how 3D is being introduced in education. Hopefully we'll have a local Cal Poly person as well to come aboard and talk about what we're doing here on the Central Coast as far as using 3DB. Okay.
All right. Signing off.
Bye.